Doug Peterson going, did it really go through?
Yeah.
I thought I was done with the new worst whatevers I've seen, but we back. Oh God, no, Chargers. Your win probability chart is a little too on the nose for my liking. Much like the electric car, its greatest weakness is when it runs out of electricity. Sure, a Tesla can go from 0 to 60 in 2.07 seconds, but the Chargers can blow a 60-point lead in 2.06 quarters. Trevor Lawrence has never lost a football game on Saturday, and he kept that streak alive after leading the biggest comeback since Andrew Luck and the Colts erased a 28-point deficit to the Chiefs in 2013. I'm sorry, Chargers fans, you didn't deserve to see your team blow the third biggest lead in NFL playoff history. You didn't. But that's exactly what you got. It's not fair, but I don't know when this is changing. While Trevor Lawrence and his teammates celebrated with their win in a Waffle House, the Chargers have been banned from in and out indefinitely. Today, we will relive the painful downfall of the 2022 Chargers, a team so cursed they can't win a playoff game even when they have the officials clearly on their side. It's the new worst collapse I've ever seen. If you don't want your team cursed or collapsing, subscribe to this YouTube channel. I did launch my Losers Blend of coffee at BenchwarmerBrew.com just in time for Seahawks fans, Chargers fans, Dolphins fans, all of the losers who don't think they deserve better. I got great coffee for you. And no, you don't fucking deserve that either, but at BenchwarmerBrew.com, you should try my new medium dark roast, because it's delicious. All great historic collapses begin with a thriving empire. The Mongolian Empire, the Roman Empire, the Persian Empire all came tumbling down because of a series of mistakes from the top levels of power. But since the Chargers have never had an empire, this is just a regular collapse. All the Chargers had to do to jump out to a 27-0 lead was let the ball come to them. Literally. Lost in the 4 Trevor Lawrence first half interceptions was that the first 2 weren't really even his fault. Instead, it was great play by the Chargers defense that guided tipped passes like this at the line of scrimmage to their own hands, and Asante Samuel's aggressive coverage that led to the second. Samuel's 3 first half picks were the most ever by a single player in one half of a playoff game. 2 of his picks directly set up Chargers touchdowns. Now, the Jaguars amassed 5 total turnovers in the first half, including this weird muffed punt that just bounced off Chris Claybrook's head. Back in 1999, the Jags were on the right end of a 5-turnover half when they gave Dan Marino the worst send-off in NFL history. Jaguar interceptions, though, they're literally in Asante Samuel's blood, as his father did the same to the Jags in the postseason 17 years ago. They became the first father and son combo to have multiple picks in the playoffs. Phillip Rivers, of course, became the first QB to conceive a child during a playoff game. So plenty of links between these 2 organizations and their football lineage. For a comp here, Trevor Lawrence threw just 8 interceptions all season long. He had one of the lowest interception percentages in the NFL, and he threw 4 picks before he had his 5th completion in this game. Again, it all wasn't entirely his fault, but I can't understate how terrible everything was going for Jacksonville in the first half. Now, to be fair to Jacksonville and their putrid first half performance, this game was not officiated like all the other games all season long. And the thing I hate the most about NFL officiating is that it's a known thing that when the playoffs start, those games are going to be officiated differently than the regular season. Why it's not just done the same frickin' way all year long is truly baffling. Now, if you recall, the NFL put an unnecessary emphasis for illegal contact by defenders to start this football season all the way back in September. Do you remember that shit? And right here is Asante Samuel making illegal contact on Zay Jones. 100% of the time, unless of course it was Sauce Gardner, so 99% of the time this season, this would have been illegal contact. 5 free yards and an automatic first down for the Jags in the red zone. This also probably would have been pass interference. Obviously, this is kind of irrelevant, but I mention it to just remind you how everything was going the Chargers' way. The Jaguars were so bad in the first half. How bad were they? They were so bad, Trevor Lawrence was getting called T-Loss. Now, I was calling him Lawrence of Arabia, but that's because I knew his second half performance was going to be Oscar-worthy. And what's a Charger? Well, it's an ancient warhorse of Arabian descent. So my nickname really works on multiple levels, doesn't it? The Jaguars were so bad that Jackson DeVille was actually putting clothes on in this game. The Jaguars were so bad in the first half, fans started a GoFundMe to bring back Urban Meyer. The Jags were so bad that Florida men turned off the game and started doing meth again to pass the time. The Jaguars were so bad in the first half, they made the Chargers look like a better team without Mike Williams on the field. The Jaguars were so bad that Limp Bizkit retook them as the most beloved group in Jacksonville. Oh, the Jaguars were so bad they nearly cost the Chargers Sean Payton. For Jacksonville, though, the most important drive of the game, in my opinion, came in the final 2 minutes of the first half. Things could have been bad going into halftime, but this drive was the first one for the Jags that did not result in a turnover or a punt or just straight up tears, as they gave the world our first signal that they were not a caged cat waiting to be put out of its misery by the Tiger King, scoring a tutty right before halftime. Now, Brandon Staley, while limber and arguably one of the best thrusting coaches in the NFL, really does put the stale in Staley. Here's something you should consider if your team does jump out to a massive lead, okay? If your team cannot run the football, you can't control the clock, so you might never be safe with the lead. And that's what happened in this game. Staley and Herbert will take all of the blame for the Chargers' loss, and they deserve most of it. They really do. But the thing that swung this game in the Jags' favor were not running the ball and 2 key injuries. Chargers fill-in left tackle Jamari Salyer got hurt, forcing third-string tackle Foster Sorrell into the game, which is why the Jags were able to get a couple second-half sacks. Mike Williams, of course, was already out at wide receiver, and then their targets became incredibly limited when DeAndre Carter also got hurt. You have probably seen the 5 points vid about how if the Falcons had just kneeled the ball in the second half of Super Bowl 51, they would have won that game. And while that would be just ridiculous, the point is to milk the clock when you have a lead. Milk that clock like a prostate and win the game that way. Sure, it's a lot more work, but the end result is much more satisfying. What was I saying? Run the ball. That's the point. Run the ball. Austin Eckler in the third quarter had 3 rushing attempts for -5 yards rushing. In the fourth quarter, Eckler and Kelly combined for 12 rushing yards. LA had maybe 1 rushing first down, maybe in the second half, and ran 7 times total by their backs in the second half. 7 rushing attempts. More importantly, they could not get Austin Eckler, their most explosive player, the ball in the short passing game. 2 receptions for just 8 yards. Now, while all that inefficiency was happening, the Chargers defense wasted Asante Samuel's record-setting first half. Just a field goal for the Chargers offense, while Trevor Lawrence found every open ball catcher, proving his long hair is way more chill than Herbert's. And while the Chargers' second half was defined by their inability to run the ball and move the ball, it was this missed 40-yard kick by Dicker, the kicker, that sucked the electricity out of the Chargers. That miss was the precursor to all Chargers fans cursing the football gods. As yes, the Jags would drive down for a TD after that. Joey Bosa was losing his shit, drawing 2 penalties for acting like a baby. I mean, I get it. Phillip Rivers did this for his entire career without ever drawing a flag. But Rivers was lovable in a hateable way, Joey. I don't know what Bosa said to the official here, but it must have been highly uncalled for, considering he's not even looking at the ref when he says it. Remember, Joey, Rivers never used swear words when he was going crazy, and that's why he got away with it. It was his second penalty, though, that came after the PAT that made Dougie Peterson decide to go for 2, which put the Jags within 2 points. Doug Peterson's balls are so big, he actually wanted to have the number 28 on the scoreboard in a come-from-behind gain. I mean, he had his medical staff come over and cut a hole in his underwear because his balls were swelling to uncomfortable levels. It was the only way he could function. On a 4th and 1 play where Jacksonville was just out of field goal range, Peterson dialed up a play that I honestly think is better than the Philly special. Just look at this glorious 3-back set. Everyone knows it's going to be a run on 4th and 1, and the Jags sell it inside, which leaves Asante Samuel out here on an island. And unlike Revis, he bites, he leaves his island, and Travis Etienne burns him. Asante Samuel could have finished with the greatest postseason game maybe ever by a corner had he stayed home here and made the tackle for a loss. And maybe, though, the most touching tribute to how crazy this game was, we got Al Michaels on the call for the game-winning kick.
Kansas City. Here we go for the win. Got it, but there's a flag down. There's a flag down.
Okay, so maybe we weren't lucky. Al Michaels has seen so much football. He's not even excited by the 3rd greatest comeback in playoff history. He's like a man who's been on a carnivore diet so long he only gets excited if the meat he's eating was the last living creature in a now extinct species. The Chargers are so bad. How bad are they? They might fire the coach that got them back to the playoffs for the first time since 2018. The Chargers are so bad, the best thing their organization has done in the last 10 years was stab their starting quarterback in the lungs to open the door for Justin Herbert. The Chargers are so bad, they asked the NFL if they could play under COVID restrictions again with no fans in the stadium so nobody could point out how all of their home games are really like away games. The Chargers are so bad, they cost this poor soul who bet on them at halftime $1.4 million. That's a bet not even Calvin Ridley would take, who will be on the Jags roster next season, guys. The Chargers were so bad, they only scored 20 points off those 5 Jaguars turnovers. The Chargers are so bad, they took the heat off the Colts for blowing the biggest lead in NFL history just this season. We don't even care about that game because it wasn't in the playoffs, and it was the Colts. They're gonna get a pass because they're a bad team. The Chargers did this in the playoffs. The Chargers are so bad, the Jaguars technically never had a lead in regulation in this game, and LA still lost. Look at the clock here, it hits 0 with the Chargers up 30-28. Then the ball goes through, so after regulation, the Jags win. The Chargers are so bad, they made me forget how bad it was this season to be a Broncos fan. Welcome in, Chargers. Welcome in. Thanks for watching That's Good Sports. Again, don't forget to check out my Losers Blend coffee, specifically designed for a losing palate at BenchwarmerBrew.com. I'm on Twitter, BenchwarmerBrew.com. I'm on Twitter, Instagram at Brandon Perna if you want to follow me in those places.